Drayage and intermodal in logistics. Joining us today to speak about that, Paul Brashier, Vice President of Drayage and Intermodal at ITS Logistics. Paul, it's great to see you once again. Welcome.
Thanks, Russell. Appreciate it.
Paul, you know, it's that time of year. We're celebrating Lunar New Year, and I'm just kind of curious about the impact that that had on the supply chain industry this year. What would you say?
Well, this year was muted. There's so much inventory sitting in all of the DCs and warehouses throughout North America for large shippers of all types of product, not just your retail, but commodity based as well, that it was super muted. So right now we're seeing that we're not going to have much of a lift, and we're going to roll into February, March, kind of keeping the same cadence of low volumes that we saw in December, and probably not going to see any lift until we get into Q3, Q4 of this year.
So really, you see this as a continuing situation here until the latter part of the year?
Yes, yeah, and there's so much capacity and infrastructure that was put in place over the last 18 months that all, if any, of this lift that comes in out of China and the Pacific is going to be absorbed fairly easy, and we're not going to see any major disruptions throughout the supply chain when it comes to ports or terminal activity.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, clearly one of the things that's top of mind for everybody everywhere is inflation. So there is such a thing as inflationary pressure. How is that affecting the situation right now?
So transportation made up most of the, I would say, if not all of the inflation that we saw. That's gone down drastically. If you look at what people are paying right now, BCOs for space on vessels, drayage costs are gone down. We're in RFP with our clients right now that was usually something that we engaged February, March, December when rates were at their lowest. We've taken rates down 45, 50, 60%. You're seeing space for a 40-foot box from East Asia, $2,000, $3,000. A year ago, that was $20,000 to $30,000. So inflationary pressure on transportation is down drastically. So anything that we're seeing left that might cause some inflationary pressure is not coming from transportation.
Now, let's stick with that theme for just a moment. I think it's fair to say that the last 24 months brought it brought drayage and port visibility, to the fore. It's something that people are really, thinking about. So give me an example of drayage visibility, how to put this, drayage visibility in action. What would you say?
Up until 24 months ago, this was a hidden part of the supply chain. As a matter of fact, for 15 years I've been doing this. I'd go home for Christmas and I'd sit and talk to cousins and aunts and uncles, and they'd say, "Paul, would you tell them what you do?" And I would talk to them for 45 minutes, and then I would say, "Hey, I'm just a truck driver." Now they know who we are and what we do. And on the visibility piece, trucking companies and transportation providers need to take the lion's share of visibility, which means picking up when a container hits the water overseas, tracking it throughout the terminals and the ports, the outgate events, tracking the power unit and the driver to final destination, and then also giving visibility when that container terminates empty, which is the end of the process. That's always going to be something I believe that'll stick with us, but it was something that was mastered, and a lot of development and investment went into that. So it's a good byproduct of a really tough time.
Paul, that invisibility that you're talking about what it is that you did, nobody in the family knew what you did. Anybody involved in supply chain in any kind of way experienced the very same thing, including those of us in the supply chain media. Nobody had any idea until the lockdown, until the pandemic, caused all these disruptions, and all of a sudden now so many people know not only what the supply chain is, but the importance of it, right?
Right.
Going forward, what do you see ahead in the supply chain industry? Look into your crystal ball, if you would, and tell us what kind of challenges, what kind of opportunities do you see up ahead?
Let's start positive, right? On the positive side, there has been so much efficiency realized in this mode of transportation over the past 24 months that we are going to be in a better place. Terminals, ports, port authorities, are putting in vast amounts of infrastructure to make sure that we don't run into this again. I'd say one of the drawbacks that we're going to see, and something that we're keeping a very close eye on, is equipment, especially in the rail ramps. So ocean containers usually come into the ports, of course, because that's where the vessels are, but they IPI over and then they go to the rail ramps. That was kind of discontinued because people needed freight so bad that they were pulling it from the terminal. So all the equipment that was inland went out to these ocean locations. And that's your chassis, 45 foot, 40 foot, 20 foot. Well, now they're sitting out there now, and we're starting to see, after the rail strike kind of coming to a conclusion and ahead, needing that equipment back into these inland ramps because that freight's going to start showing up there. So we're going to keep a close eye the next 3, 4, 5 months to make sure that we have enough equipment in place, and as a good steward, right, having an ecosystem that realizes this is going to be a priority. So we're working ahead of issues and not reacting to them when they occur.
Oh, that's very smart indeed. Final question. It occurs to me that somebody may not be entirely familiar with ITS Logistics. So if you would, give us a snapshot of what the company does, but more particularly, what is it that you're doing to help companies with their distribution needs?
So ITS Logistics in the dray and intermodal space is the number 11 provider in the U.S. We are nationwide. We're in 38 markets throughout North America on the rail ramps and the ports. We provide our clients at no cost visibility to their freight from the time that it hits the water to the time that it delivers. And not just the visibility, but the actual execution of that freight to make sure that it gets delivered into their supply chain and finally reaches who needs the freight and who pays the bills, that end-use consumer.
Good work indeed. Paul, I know you're busy here at the conference, but you found time to speak with us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Russell. Thank you.
Paul Brashier, ITS Logistics, speaking with us today about drayage, about intermodal, about challenges ahead in logistics. Thanks for watching.